Hello everyone, RGB Fox here, and I'm here to do a small in-depth review on Nahida. Will it be too in-depth? Probably not, but I am going to be answering some questions, concerns, and whatnot about Nahida, how great she is, and what you are looking for this character. So let's jump right in. Nahida is probably one of the best, if not the best 5 stars in the game right now, and part of that reason has to do with Dendro and its many reactions. All of the elemental reactions with Dendro aside from burning are pretty broken and busted, and if you haven't been using them thus far with DMC or Kale or even someone like Tignati, then quite frankly Nahida is going to be doing you a big favor and more whenever you realize how great these reactions are. For that reason alone, I feel that she is definitely a character that if you can't pull for, you should, as she will just make your overall teams better. However, I would say don't feel forced to pull her, because at the end of the day, we're not going to have very much endgame, if any more endgame at all, aside from the TCG that Mihoyo is deciding to lay on us, which of course is going to be fine, but I would have liked a survival mode or something to play with. But as of right now, how it stands, I don't think she is a must pull, and you are perfectly fine using DMC. As we discuss further, you're going to notice that DMC actually can be a bit better than Nahida in certain instances, but those situations are very rare and split apart. So don't go ahead thinking that I'm going to just advocate for DMC. If you can get Nahida, she is very worth it, and I truly think that everyone should go ahead and grab it. Well, grab her. First and foremost, Nahida is a Dendro 5-star unit with many great applications in the game, being able to be an amazing Dendro applicator for multiple reactions, whether they be Quicken, Bloom, Spread, any of the other Bloom sub-reactions such as Burgeon and Hyperbloom, and of course, because of her massive 1.5 unit Dendro application from her E, she's actually pretty good in burning teams, though I still don't think they're very good. Nahida has access to multiple weapons that you can give her, not just her signature, such as the Kagura's Verity, Lost Prayer the Sacred Winds, Sacrificial Fragments, Favonia's Codex, the Magic Guide, which is an excellent 3-star option for her, especially off-field. But quite frankly, because she's a Catalyst user, she also has access to using the Thrilling Tales of Dragon Slayers. Aside from that, she has many accessible options such as the Solar Pearl, the Hawkinshin Ring, the Withsit, and of course, if you don't have any other option, you can always use the Mappa Mare that you can craft, because it gives you a lot of elemental mastery and a pretty good passive if you play her on field. The only drawback to some of these weapons, such as the Solar Pearl and the Lost Prayer of Sacred Winds, is that you can kind of overcap with crit rate with her. The reason why has to do initially with her elemental skill, which allows you to deal Dendro damage if you're up close, or go into a camera-like lens and apply Dendro up to 8 enemies and then trigger the Seeds of Skanda. And ultimately what that ends up doing for you is having little Dendro Blossom markers on the opponents, and much like Yoimiya's elemental burst blossom, you'll be able to deal Dendro damage every 2.5 seconds when you do a elemental reaction, or when the enemy gets damaged by Dendro cores, right? And at that point she'll be able to reapply Dendro onto the enemy, and you'll be able to conduct a lot more Dendro reactions as a result, such as a Bloom, Quicken, Aggravate, or Spread. Ultimately, they do have pretty good multipliers where it will do more damage with elemental mastery than your attack, so building attack on her isn't really as beneficial. And if you want to go more in depth into it, you can always watch the Jeff77's video, because he does explain it very well. Now, where crit rate might not be too good for your Nahida weapon wise is just based on her elemental skill, or rather her A4 passive, where depending on how much elemental mastery she has, she will get an additional 24% crit rate on her Seeds of Skanda, or rather the Trikarma Purification, which is the damage that happens whenever you conduct an elemental reaction on the enemies that are affected by All Schemes to Know. And not only that, but you do also get some damage bonus. However, the crit rate can be over 100 if you just keep stacking crit on her. So That's why having those weapons may just be overkill. However, as long as you have a good 1-to-2 ratio, you really don't have to worry about it that much. Going more in depth, you will get a maximum of 80% damage bonus and 24% crit rate on your Tri-Karma Purification, but it only lasts for that specific interaction, not for your overall Nahida damage. So don't get too trigger happy on just stacking hella elemental mastery on her, alright? Now, when her burst is up, you will actually have another buff set from Nahida, which is her A1 passive. And her A1 passive states that whenever her burst is up, the active party member on the field, whoever's on the field at the moment, is going to get an additional 25% elemental mastery based on the character on your party with the most elemental mastery. Meaning that if your Nahida has 1000 elemental mastery and let's say your Nilo is on field, she will gain 250 elemental mastery, assuming your Nahida has 1000. And this also works on Nahida too, is not just exclusively to every other character that you have in your party. As if the buffs didn't end there, her elemental burst also gives your team and Nahida buffs based on how many characters you have of a certain type, where 2 pyro characters will give you more damage on your Tri-Karma Purification, 2 electro characters give you a shorter activation window for the Tri-Karma Purification, and the Hydra units being able to extend the Shrine of Maya duration with a base duration of 15 seconds and a cooldown of 13.5. This also means that your characters will be able to retain the elemental mastery buff for longer, and essentially you can have 100% uptime on the elemental burst, assuming you have enough energy for your Nahida, but she generally doesn't even need that much, more like 10 energy really. Now, when it comes to artifact sets, the only artifacts that you should really get is the 4-piece Deepwood Memory set on Nahida, as that is the best one in terms of Dendro Bloom damage. And of course, there are other artifact sets that you can give her, such as the 4-piece Gilded Dream sets in very niche situations. But in my opinion, considering number 1, I don't even have enough Gilded Dream artifacts to be able to give her, and number 2, the fact that you know, getting so much elemental mastery isn't really necessary, I personally would just stick with 4-piece Deepwood Memories, as that's going to be the overall best one for Nahida. Aside from reducing Dendro damage resistance from enemies, it is the overall best artifact set to give her if you're just going to focus on the Dendro core reactions, whether it be Bloom, Hyperbloom, or Burgeon. Aside from that, I truly would not recommend Gilded Dreams unless you're doing like a burning team and you want her to own the burning damage. But yeah, constellations are coming up next, and C1 is like very mid. That's really all I want to say about it. All it'll really do is count +1 to all of the units that you can have in your team for the buffs, Pyro, Electro, and Hydro. However, if you already have 2 Hydro and or 2 Electro or 2 Pyro, then it becomes unnecessary. Your C2 allows you to actually crit your transformative damage, and it also allows you to reduce enemies' defense whenever you activate Quicken, Aggravate, or Spread. This one is honestly one of the better ones in my opinion, but still not something that you really have to go for, as critting your Bloom damage is not really that important, and it also has a fixed rate of 20 and 100% respectively, and it cannot increase at all whatsoever. So if you think that it can, trust me, it's just not possible. Your C3 and your C5 are the only ones that are going to be, you know, the standard ones, increasing skill level and increasing burst level. The C4 increases your elemental mastery based on the amount of party members you have with different types, and it only increases to a maximum of 160. This can help you meet your elemental mastery goals, but if you overcap, and that would be past 1000, the elemental mastery given by this buff ends up being a little bit worse. But overall, it is a very okay buff that you can have. Sure, you can increase your Bloom damage some more if you're the owner of Blooms with Nahida. Aside from that, not necessarily anything too special. Now, her C6 is interesting because if you trigger Tri-Karma Purification with your normal and charge attacks, she will just deal an additional instance of Dendro damage with it, meaning more spread and more DPS over time. But again, very and I wouldn't recommend it. But C6, I guess, is pretty good. One thing I forgot to mention is just the sheer fact that her elemental skill is broken due to the sheer fact that it doesn't really have any ICD. It can affect enemies with Dendro every time it triggers, and if there is ICD, I think it's just a trigger interval of about 1 second, which makes me wonder, why did they create this unit so incredibly insane? She's actually top tier. Nahida ends up overshadowing the other Dendro units, and even though someone like Tignari can also apply a lot of Dendro on field, Nahida is able to also do it off field, meaning that she completely is better in many other teams and applications where you would want a Dendro unit to supplement the reactions that you're looking for. For that reason, we're going to be looking at which team she's really good in, what are her best ones, and spoiler alert, is going to be Hyperbloom, just going to say it off the bat. When talking about Hyperbloom teams, I think it's imperative to note that Sinnoh is going to be one of the characters that wants her in his team, right? And the reason being is that due to the 1.5 units of Dendro and the fact that she can apply it every 2.5 seconds, and you know, of course, the time decreases whenever she has Electro units with her burst up, it means that every single time she lands Dendro on the enemies, you're going to get more seeds, you're going to get more Dendro, and you're going to be able to keep up the Quicken aura, meaning that Hydra units like Xingqiu or Yelan, Kokomi, whoever, are not going to completely override the Dendro aura and actually are allowing them to create more seeds, meaning more damage. And I know I just said a bunch of mumbo jumbo there, but just know that Nahida plus Hydro equals more seed, equals Quicken aura to last longer, equals Quick Bloom is actually very possible with someone like Sinnoh, whereas with DMC you actually manage to just have too little Dendro application in a far spread out time frame to where you don't get that many seeds. Now, there are a few instances where DMC can actually perform better than Nahida in the Sinnoh team, and that is only whenever you're facing large amount of enemies at one time, and then a following mob comes up out of nowhere where Sinnoh cannot switch out of his burst. But it's very niche and you'll be able to manage without it anyway, so yeah, just build your team based on what you need. Another option you have for Hyperbloom teams is actually to have Nahida be your on-field driver. Don't worry, you'll also be able to go ahead and activate her E, but at the same time, her attacks are infused with Dendro automatically since she's a catalyst user, meaning that ultimately she gets to create a lot of seeds at once. And they have a pretty decent amount of AoE. It's not really that big, but ultimately it won't matter because someone like Raiden Shogun, who can affect the seeds with her elemental skill, is actually going to be able to target those seeds and then blow them up on the enemy's faces. Of course, in this case, you would want to give her all elemental mastery along with Gilded Dreams as her set. But fret not, you can always replace Raiden Shogun with someone like Kuki. You can also do an Anemo unit like Kazuha or Sucrose in order to trigger it with their bursts with someone like Sucrose. And you don't need to have Yelan and Xingqiu on your team, as they are best whenever you have single target enemies such as big bosses or just one small wave. However, with multiple waves and large AoE instances, you can use someone like Ayato over Xingqiu and have him be the on-field driver. But yeah, I'm gonna do a little bit of a showcase to show how well these teams actually work out. Now, even though I wanted to make a more detailed guide about the kind of teams that you could play with Nahida in this video, I ended up realizing that I might have taken up too much time describing everything else whenever I did her review. So I will end it off here, and I'll make a separate video on the types of teams that you could play with Nahida and make it more in depth, since this project would be way too long otherwise. That being said, I do think that Nahida is one of the best characters that you can play in this game right now, and if you have the Primo Gems to spare, I would highly recommend you get her. But even if you don't, do note that these characters will rerun every single time. It's kind of an odd mystery to not see them really come out every so often, so you be sure to just wait it out, and if you can't get her now, do know that you can get her later. That being said, this will be the end of the video, and my next video, aside from what other teams you can play with Nahida, I am also going to make a video talking about Ayato versus Child, and if it's worth to get Child now, so be on the lookout for that. I definitely think that he's still a very good character to play and to use, especially, fun fact, with Nahida, but it is just something that we will have to do later on. But as of right now, I'm going to end it off here, and if you enjoyed this video, of course, leave a comment, like, share, subscribe, whatever you want to, or hell, do nothing at all. But yeah, if you like this video, do let me know what you like about it, and if you had any other ideas concerning things that I should have mentioned about Nahida, do mention it in the comments below. This has been RGB Fox. I appreciate your time.